Hello and welcome to Education Scotland's The Pedagogy podcast. I'm your host, Bex Ewart, and I will be leading us through some really interesting conversations around about pedagogy with a really wide and broad spectrum of educational professionals, children and young people. This podcast came about as a response to the OECD report, which found that in order to improve the quality of outcomes for our children, practitioners and teachers need to be supported to explore their own pedagogy and their practice through a pedagogical lens. Unsurprisingly, in the early years, it's been a focus, and so there's a lot of research and policy documents and research papers around about the subject of pedagogy. But as we move through the school stages and into secondary school and further education, that reference to pedagogy drops off. We'll be talking to a whole host of educational professionals from the early years through primary, young children and people from various different stages in their education, and then right into further education, exploring pedagogy, what it means to different people, and what we might change and what we might challenge ourselves around to ensure that our education meets the needs of our children and young people as we move into an exciting but unknown future. So, without further ado, let's start with this week's guest. So, welcome to this episode of the Pedagogy podcast from Education Scotland. I'm really excited to be talking to Nicola Ngarewa. Is that pronounced correctly?
Beautifully.
I've been practicing. And her journey and her outlook on education is very exciting, and I'm really pleased to be able to talk to you. So, Nicola, can you give a bit of a background to yourself and tell us how you ended up where you are now?
Kia ora, kanurita mahi aroha ki a koe Bex, me ngā kai wakarongo, ko Nicola Ngarewa au no ngā, he uri au no ngā te rui ngā rauru me ngā ruahine. So just a warm and wonderful greeting to you, Bex, and also to the listeners. I'm Nicola Ngarewa. I am a New Zealand Māori, and I affiliate to the wonderful tribes here in Taranaki of Ngāti Ruanui, Ngā Rauru and Ngā Ruahine. So I was really privileged. I was brought up in a very strong bicultural, bilingual household, three generational home. But we didn't, and we had really fabulous, idyllic childhood, but we were largely from a factory kind of based family. So my parents were freezing workers. My mother was a cleaner of the school. The works closed, which kind of in our world meant that many of our whānau or our family had to move out to the cities, and we chose to stay home in our very small community. And what that meant was my parents had to retrain in order to sustain their family. So my father, who was a freezing worker or factory worker, retrained as a secondary teacher, and my mother, who was the cleaner of the school, eventually became the principal of that school. So we're really lucky that we had some amazing cultural and I guess, educative opportunities that many young people in my country aren't afforded. And that kind of catapulted, I guess, our interest and our love and passion for education. I trained as a teacher, when I left school, but I didn't really find my passion for education myself until I worked in the New Zealand prison system. And lots of the young people that I worked with in there, they weren't devious young people. They were just young people like myself who hadn't been given the same educational or cultural capital that I'd been given. And I guess from that age and from that drive and passion, it really got me thinking about what could education look like that was truly equitable and aiming for excellence and coming from a really strengths-based model of being able to do things. And I think I've probably always felt really comfortable in that space, swimming against the tide. And I've had 3 principalships now, and in all of those schools have been, traditional based schools. And I guess I've had the opportunity to work alongside some amazing people to be able to see what can we do differently here that puts our young people at the centre, the community at the heart we do, that disrupts educational norms, but in a way that's absolutely focused on the future for our beautiful taonga, or our beautiful young people that we get to serve alongside. So I guess in a nutshell, Bex, that's kind of a big part of my journey and drive and passion why I think swimming against the tide and being courageous and vulnerable at the same time is so incredibly important.
Absolutely. And the term disruptor of educational norms really speaks to me, because I think we sit within systems that if we don't challenge those systems and think about why they're there and what purpose they serve, like you say, we do a massive disservice to the young people that we're working with and for. So that's
Absolutely. In fact, I used to make a big joke when I first became a principal that when I introduced myself and I said I was a principal, people's eyes glazed over and they became very bored with me very quickly. But when I introduced myself as a disruptor of educational norms, that was sort of so much more riveting and perhaps more true to what I see as being really great transformative leadership that, like you said, we need that so much in the education system. And I kind of liken, if we're not doing that as leaders, it's a little bit in my country. It's a little bit back in the early 1900s in the Māori culture. If you spoke your native language, if you spoke Te Reo Māori in our schools, you were strapped, because it was part of the process of teaching our young, Māori people to be assimilated and to learn English. And so I kind of liken not being transformative in our leadership and not being future focused is the same as inadvertently strapping our young people and not setting them up for the future that they absolutely should be in control of and embracing. It's going to be so different than ours.
Yeah, absolutely. There's aspects to the challenges and the opportunities our young children have that we can't even imagine yet, and so it's putting them at the heart and giving them the skills to embrace the unknown, I guess.
Absolutely, and I guess that's been part of the school that I'm currently at, Te Kura Tuaroa Ngāmotu, or Spotswood College. It's in Taranaki, New Plymouth. So I joined about 4 years ago, and I came in very specific with the focus that what we were going to do was transform a high-performing traditional school into an absolutely future-focused school that put the students at the centre, community at the heart. You'll hear me say that many times because I'm really strongly believe in that. And that was quite a journey to shift the mindset of our staff and lead that into our community, into our tauira or our students, and how could that be done differently? So Bex, some of the things, there was, first of all, we had to understand really clearly what our why was, and that we all had to be really on board with our why. And look, there's so much knowledge and information around why we should be embracing being a future-focused school. And like you've said, you just look at factories today where they might be delivering 350,000 packages but only have a team of 6 humans on site. So these were the things that we had to consider as we were re-strategizing what it would look like. The next thing that we did was we had to make sure that our systems and structures were in parallel shift with our philosophical thinking, so that we needed to make sure that the changes that we're making we were talking about, but equally what we're talking about, you could see the systemic and structural shifts within our system. So for things, you would say student agency and not running like a factory-based school. So we had to get rid of the bows and make sure that students were leading their own way of getting into the right spaces that they need to be at the right time. Controversial, but after a week it works and still works perfectly. So that was, we talked about the importance of not being factory-based in design, traditional factory model, but we also therefore had to get rid of the bows to make sure that it was in alignment. It was a parallel shift in our thinking. And then that kind of led on to some significant re-curriculum or pedagogical shifts as well. And so some of the exciting things that we have been able to do, once upon a time, 4 years ago, we would have had psychology as one course here that students could get into. They would probably be the same year level. Then we would have statistics here. It would be the same year level, no matter what the child's actual nature or depth of learning or prior learning had been. And then we would have geography over here. But what we've been able to do with our new curriculum design and rethinking our pedagogy is we've been able to, I guess, not only co-construct the learning, but bring courses together. So now we have Crime Bites, which is a combination of statistics, geography, and statistics, geography, I'm forgetting the third one, statistics and psychology. And our young people work with local detectives to solve local problems. So it's just bringing the curriculum and our pedagogy to life and beyond the four walls of a classroom environment. It's exciting, it's radiating and energising.
Yeah, but for you and for the adults in the space, but also for the children in the space, because you're then learning together and you're like you say, co-constructing. So you've talked about the term pedagogy and you've talked about a shift in pedagogy, but what does pedagogy mean to you, and what does it mean to your staff team?
Sure, and I'd like to think that we're kind of all on the same page with what this looks like. And I guess for us, it's the essence of learning and teaching. So we have a really beautiful phrase in Te Ao Māori, and it's called akunga. And akunga means to teach, but also to learn. So it's one and the same thing. And so the Māori phraseology that we use for student and that we use here at Spotswood College is akunga. You are the teacher and you are the learner, both at the same time. And I think that's a really important positional base around how we see learning and pedagogy. And then we have like four or four, pillars, four pillars that we think is absolutely critical that I would expect to see in every single space of learning that I walked out to. And that's deep, that's visible, that's inclusive, and it's culturally responsive learning. So we've kind of got, templates or structures and expectations and professional learning and a whole range of things that sits around. So if I was to walk out, I would want to know that every young child in our school has been given the best experiences of deep, visible, inclusive and culturally responsive teaching and learning pedagogy. So that's how we've co-constructed or worked with our community to make sure it's singing true to our aspirations or their aspirations.
Or yeah, shared aspirations. That sounds, I love that idea of this sort of duality of being the teacher and the learner at the same time, and that how that would shift the power dynamic between the young person and the adults in the space.
Absolutely. And I guess one thing I probably have to mention, and you heard me say it earlier, I think we often as educational leaders, and I think that every teacher is an educational leader in their own space. So I'm not just talking about a hierarchy or a positional leadership, I'm talking about teachers. Every single teacher is a leader of learning in many contexts, including their space and others. And so what I think is really important around being leaders of learning is that you have to be open to being courageous. But being courageous goes hand in hand with being vulnerable, outside of our comfort zones and not always knowing the answer to things and being absolutely okay with that, as well as making mistakes, which, by the way, I make more often than not. And I'm okay with that because that's part of my learning process, and I have to apologise if I've gone too far. When I've gone too far and got it really wrong, but that's also part of my process of learning. I'm absolutely okay with that because you can't, courage and vulnerability go hand in hand. But I have to say the amazing thing about courage is it's contagious. So the more we spread being courageous, the more others will pick up, including our young people, on that synergy. I think that's really important. Right.
No, that really, the phrase that you're using there, courage is contagious, really speaks to me. And that idea of being able to sit with almost the discomfort of not knowing something and being okay with that discomfort and that kind of cognitive dissonance, and being able to find the solution together with the students in front of you.
Absolutely. And being I think a really good space for educators to sit is always just slightly outside of our comfort zone, because that's what we expect of our young people on a day-to-day basis. And so we should be also embracing that and being okay with that. And I think that's a good, healthy space for us to be in. Just always slightly outside of our comfort zone. And I guess also, as a leader of a school, I'm really cognizant that these mind shifts, they take time, they take challenge. You need to be supportive of your team to do this, and you need to absolutely acknowledge and support those that are the early adopters of it, but also find ways to coerce and after support those that are taking a little bit longer in that journey, and that's absolutely okay too. But I think the other really key thing is that you have to find and create headspace for people to be able to process this, what these pedagogical shifts, what these curriculum redesigns look like and what they feel like. And you have to be able to create lots of space for conversations, really rich conversations, so that we can challenge our own bias or own unconscious bias around thinking, that we can find, collaborate on solutions, and that we also have the time and space to be able to sit with it for a while and just process and think and imagine and start to get a sense of what that could be like for us, being different in our spaces of learning.
So in terms of the work that you yourself have done to reach this conclusion, what are the thinkings or the pieces that you've read or the people you've come across that have inspired your thinking about pedagogy?
Yeah, gosh, that's how long have we got? I guess I could say, to really condense that down, I've been really fortunate. There have been so many different people, like I said, from working in the prison system to my whānau or my family, that have really challenged me to be the best version of myself as an educational leader. But they're also a team of people, and we do call ourselves Disrupted. It's 6 principals here in New Zealand, and we kind of have worked together to make sure that we're supporting innovations in our spaces, but not only that, we're supporting innovation that's happening at all levels across the teaching profession, whether it's early childhood, primary, secondary, tertiary. And so we have a social media space that we just let people share their stories. We will do podcasts too, actually, Bex, and different share things, so that this, because what often happens is that there's these amazing innovations that are happening, but they're kind of happening ad hoc or separate, and you don't always get to hear about them, and therefore you don't always get to have that level of wraparound or support you need to keep challenging that space as well. And so we've these 6 principles, I'm one of them. Our team Disrupted, I think, are absolutely aspirational. They help you not only problem solve, but more importantly, they challenge your thinking so that you can really delve down and justify what you're doing, and know that what you're doing is coming from a good place, with the best intents and the best possible system that you can, acknowledging that often innovation, you're building the plane while you're flying it. And so I think they are an incredible team of leaders in our country.
Great. That peer network and the space, and the safe space, the trust that there is to be able to go, I've had this idea, it's going to look like this, what do you think? And it not to be, well, we don't do that.
Yeah,
that's not
absolutely.
how it's done.
Absolutely. And I think there's probably, I think that, there's probably some similarities in the way that we think, but there's also a really strong level of diversity. And I'm really big on super diversity, like having, you need to have a support system around you for sure, but it's important to have different thinking at the table, that can make you, like I said, question things, or think of something that you hadn't thought of, or find a solution that that perhaps you hadn't considered. So I think super diversity in the teams that you kind of, or the groups, or the whānau, the family, or the teams that you get around you is really critical part of finding really fabulous future-focused solutions.
So one of the questions that I had around about the way that you've shifted your curriculum, you were talking about, for example, the crime bites, where you've got your geography, your psychology, your statistics in the one place. Do you have vertical teaching groups there, or are they horizontal? And how do you manage the timetable demands around something like that?
Sure. So my poor timetablers would say this is a logistical nightmare, but they do an amazing job. And I'd admit it's probably a lot more intense than a traditional timetable build. But effectively, it looks like this for us, that every child is expected to do literacy and numeracy. And so we're a school of about over 1,000 students, but that doesn't mean English or maths in its traditional sense. It can be. If that's what that child, if that's what that child's passionate about, they can do traditional English, traditional maths. However, if they're really passionate about sports, they can do their literacy or numeracy through a sporting context. So they might be doing a basketball sporting context maths class where they're having to do measurements and angles, they're having to work out the performance improvement based on that. So it's still really, really rich numeric skills, just done to a different context. Equally, if there's a child that's really passionate about science, they can do their literacy through, or their English standards or expectations through a science context. And so they might be doing a whole range of experiments in one of our fabulous labs out of town here, working along scientists, writing up reports, because we're very much about getting into the community being our classroom. So that's kind of the formal part of the day at the beginning. Then we have 2 to 3 hour slots, and that goes either under STEAM, which is a combination of science, technology, engineering, arts and maths, which is what the Crime Bites one of those courses. And there's we've got a curriculum handbook of about 200 courses as opposed to traditional courses of about 20. So it's just opened up so many more opportunities. But the other amazing thing that we've been able to do is called impact inquiry. And that's effectively where our young people use the inquiry design model, and they are able to bring a connected project of research to life. So for some of them, that's beekeeping. So they've designed this whole beekeeping hive system that we've got at the back of our school. We've got a farm at the back of our school. They connect in with beekeepers, they make honey, they sell honey. So we've got a design shop that the kids have designed. That's a complete student-owned and run designery shop that sells their products, whether it's, so we've got chickens, so it's your egg farm, we've got organic microgreens, so vegetables, we've got a fruit orchard, bees, but they also make other designs. So it could be jewellery that they do through their design course, and it could be clothing that they do, it could be artwork that they've done. So it's not only, I guess, finding what they're passionate about, then doing the work with teams of people to bring it to life. That's often not just a traditional teacher, it's wider than that, but they're then able to sell and make a profit from their products. And in some cases, we've worked with local business industries to then build the capacity so that we've got young entrepreneurs and designers that are connected and in the industry and making a really good side hustle for themselves at the age of 16, 14. So it's win-win. All my Christmas presents come from their store.
Gosh, and it really means there's a so we talk about learning in context, but actually from consumption to end product, that whole process is then celebrated at the end with something meaningful and real. How does that then sit alongside the more formal assessment agenda? Because as children get older, there's increasing pressure for kind of nationwide exams. I guess the same pressure is with you guys over there. So how does that sit?
So we're really lucky in the way that the New Zealand curriculum is currently, and our NCA program currently is designed. And not all schools do this, and I think it's a real missed opportunity for our country that we don't, that effectively, if you're really creative and found the way to piece it together like we have, the child could sit at the centre and the credits or the formal assessment learning sits around them, as opposed to them having to, so it's, it's authentic. It's authentic, really deep, visible, inclusive, culturally responsive teaching and learning. So as opposed to teaching to the standard, which is what we would have done in 4 years ago, a formal, this is the exam or this is the assessment, we're going to teach to the assessment. So it's been, instead of that's the assessment driving the curriculum as opposed to the learning. So that's been a really big and important shift in our curriculum design. And we're fortunate that we've been able to marry those things pretty much up up together to make huge benefits to our young people. So I'll give you a couple of examples there. We had one young person who was bunking off school, I'm not sure what the terminology used there, truanting, or he was skipping school, not going to classes, and we sat down with him and said, look, what are you doing? You're here until this time, and then we noticed for the last 2 hours of the day you're going home. Like, what are you doing when you go home? And he pulled out these most amazing personally designed pens of that, and they were just absolutely phenomenal. And parts of them were made, he was a hunter, so parts of them were made from, maybe deer antlers or things like that he'd crafted into, and they were absolutely fabulous. But he was going home to do that in his shed that was completely separate from his learning at school, which was just crazy. So the curriculum designers meant that we're going to find the passion and the absolute talent this young man has. He's able to do this now within his technology or the STEAM space. He's able to get formal assessment and credits from that, but we've also been able to help escalate his side hustle. So we've now connected him with, I guess, the business development part of the ministry for New Zealand. And he's been able to have a startup business that's been incredibly successful. And he's probably going to be on more money than what I am in the next 18 months. So we had another young person. So I guess what I'm saying is that you just have to be a bit creative, and the solutions are there if the mindset's right. And for us, it was once again that we were going to be learning. Our focus was going to be on teaching and learning, not being assessment driven solely. And that doesn't mean we're dropping academics. Our results have incrementally increased in the redesign of our program, as well as other good achievement measures that you'd want for a school, because we're still a state school that's funded by the government with these normal expectations in order to, and a community that we have to serve and get these results, as well as our young people who need to be well set up for their future. And, another example is we had a young person who was also bunking off, which sounds really bad since got half a school bunking off, which we didn't. Just a couple of cases that I want to highlight. He was designing a 3D game in his bedroom that was all based on the tectonic plates of the world, the lighting systems of the universe. It was phenomenal. But once again, he was doing this in his bedroom, nothing to do with school. It was criminal. So now with our redesign, he's able to use design technology, able to use art, able to use technology. So that's going to be effectively the assessments that he's given, as well as we can help him bring to life his game designing. It's just these are, and every school has got phenomenal young people like this that we're just not hitting the mark for, because we've got this. And I love that analogy that you've got these bowling pins, you've got a bowling ball, you whack it down. If you're lucky, it might hit some of the pins in the middle, but you've got these other amazing pins or young people on the outside who do phenomenal stuff that we are just not getting it right for. And those are the horrific stats that every country has got, that I think we have a responsibility and obligation, and we should be darn well passionate about doing better for.
I wholeheartedly agree. So this leads us nicely on to the key message. So what is your key message that you would ask others to consider to inform their own pedagogical practices?
I would say, look, I'm really fortunate. Previously, I have been the chairperson of the Teaching Council here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, Te Matatua Aotearoa. And so I've had an opportunity to mix and mingle with a whole raft. We've got 120,000 teachers here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I've had wonderful opportunity to meet many people, many teachers in their different contexts, from early childhood through to tertiary. And I would say that the one common thing that I see very strongly is that we teachers are leaders of hearts and minds. We're leaders of hearts and minds, and I think that those are the best kind of leaders. And so I guess what I would say is, we all want to do what's right by our young people. But I'm going to repeat it again. I hope I'm not sounding too monotonous, but I think it's probably my most important message is be courageous, be vulnerable, because courage is contagious. Courage is contagious. I can't say it enough.
And that is something that I'm going to carry with me from this conversation. So you've already talked about your journey, and you've transformed the practice of delivering secondary education in your context. What's next? Where are you going to go next?
Yeah, I would. Look, I am passionate about disrupting educational norms for sure. I don't know that I'm particularly strategic in what's next for me, but I would say that, you know, this is really important, and I think that I will use the opportunities that I've been given to make sure that I continue to spread the message around how important our young people are, how important it is that we transform as an educative system to make sure that we are ensuring that they can not only be be surviving in their future world, but thriving, and they're not only users of what that future world is going to be, but they're going to be the designers of it. They absolutely deserve that opportunity. For us at a very ground level here, one thing I should probably mention is Spotswood College is currently has got some of the worst buildings, I would say, in our country. So if anyone has this vision that we've got this amazing rebuild school with amazing resourcing, we don't. The gift and the power that we have is educators that are passionate and that are driven for change, and that we work really well as a team. And so we do have new buildings coming on the way that might be next 5 years or so, which is good to know. But I think so it would be about consolidating the work that we've done here, about making sure that our community and kids continue to get the best deal that they can, as well as spreading that message of the absolute urgency for change across all platforms that I can.
It's really interesting. In the last few conversations that I've had, the word urgency has been the common theme. The fact that actually we can't just keep the status quo. There's an urgency. We owe it to the children and young people that we serve to really start to think bigger and push the norms, disrupt the educational norms, as you say.
Love it. Yeah, and absolutely. And I do strongly believe there's an urgency. And I guess what I was probably trying to emphasise also, and hopefully that's part of the message that's gotten through and what I'm communicating, is that you don't have to be the biggest, the best, have lots and lots of this or that to do it. Actually, you just need to get started. And, you know, if you can find a transformative model or process that helps you to do that, or a team, that's absolutely fabulous. But just take the step in the right direction, you know, and just start somewhere. It's important.
Yes. So alongside the really interesting conversation that is certainly going to stay with me for a while, you also have the chance to add 2 songs to our inspirational playlist. So what 2 songs are going to go on the Pedagogy podcast playlist from you, Nicola?
I know, and I'm not sure that look, these are just kind of songs that I absolutely love. So I keep listening to the lyrics and thinking, oh gosh, what's the messaging that sits behind that? So Bex, I don't know if you'll be able to track this one down, but it's called Poi Air, so Poi Air, and it's by the Pātea Māori Club. So that's a small township that I'm born and raised in. It's a small community that's a very high percentage Māori or Indigenous people. The average income of my community back there is about $19,000 per annum. So we're on, very low equity index. So there's some huge challenges for our community, but my gosh, they are the most vibrant, amazing people. And one of the talents that has been generations long is their ability to sing. And so this is a song that's in Māori, but it's used in a modern context. So it was used to use, modern soundtracks to be able to really inspire our young people to learn their language. And it's a beautiful song that actually was top of the charts here in New Zealand back in the 80s for a very long time. So I would love our audience to hear Poie by the Pātea Māori Club. And then I'll go right left field and go to my favourite song, which is Boys Don't Cry by Cure. And just simply for the fact that I love it.
Excellent. Wow. Okay, they're 2 quite diverse choices, but That's fab. They've made me smile, so that was the whole point. Fabulous. I've really valued this conversation, Nicola. Thank you, and you've given me a lot to think about in my own context in early years as well. So yes, thank you so much for being a part of this. And is there a way that our listeners could try kind of see what's happening in your school or follow your progress?
Yeah, sure. So our website is www.spotswoodcollege.co.nz, but you can also, we've got a Spotswood College Events Facebook page for those that don't want to find anything more as formal as a website, and an Instagram, which is just kind of tracks the more day-to-day things, maybe fun things. But the website definitely has anything, and you can put my link in there too, Bex, which is my email, N for Nicola, N for G for girl, @spotswoodcollege.school.nz, and very happy to help an AFI and support anyone in their disruption of educational norms in any way that we can. And thank you for the opportunity, Bex. It's really, you've been great to talk to, and I think that the work that you're doing for your country is phenomenal. So ngā mihi nui ki a koe, a huge greeting and acknowledgement to you.
Thanks very much, Nicola.
I loved speaking with Nicola. She was so inspirational, and I like her introduction of herself as a disruptor of educational norms. That resonated, and I think we're in an exciting time where we can all be really well-informed disruptors and make sure that our education system and our curriculum and the way we teach it really meets the needs of the children in front of us. The few things that really jumped out to me was around about the urgency that she felt about shifting practice and about being brave and taking risks, but with incredibly robust understandings underpinning those risks. The duality of being a teacher and a learner at the same time, that idea that we are all both at all times, sits really nicely with some of the other conversations we've had around the role of the adult and the role of the teacher, and how we think about ourselves as professionals as we move forwards, thinking about how we deliver a curriculum that's fit for the future of our children. The fact that courage is contagious, and that, it's bravery can be difficult, but once we start a shift, once we start thinking outside the box, we can support our colleagues to do the same and really build a deep understanding of the same things. The idea of the real contextualised learning for young people in secondary school, despite the fact that actually she's operating within a really traditional building with the same curricular constraints that we face and with the same assessment constraints as well. So I think it's really inspiring to think of what we can do if we just push that box and if we are brave and if we are courageous. Nicola is really happy to talk with people, so please do give her an email and make contact with her. She's really passionate about spreading the idea of shifts in practice and supporting people to come to those ideas in a way that suits them and their context. What sprung for me most clearly through that is the agency that her children and young people have in her setting, and how they design the curriculum with and for their children. And I think that's just absolutely brilliant and chimes so much with the concepts of empowerment and agency and learner-led learning that we are moving towards in Scotland. Please do share your thoughts using the hashtag #ESPedagogyPodcast. Find us on Twitter and share these ideas. Start thinking and be courageous. Be contagiously courageous. Thank you very much for listening. Bye for now.